In the ancient halls of philosophy, where Marcus Aurelius penned his meditations and Epictetus taught the art of inner freedom, there exists a profound truth that modern man has forgotten. Stoicism is not the philosophy of stone hearts or cold indifference. It is not about controlling others or bending the world to your will. True Stoicism is the mastery of the self, the cultivation of virtue, and the pursuit of wisdom in all aspects of life, especially in how we conduct ourselves with others. When it comes to relationships with women, the Stoic man understands that his greatest power lies not in what he can make others do, but in what he chooses not to do himself. The ancient philosophers knew that dignity, self-respect, and emotional mastery are the foundations upon which all meaningful relationships are built. Today we explore 11 sacred principles that every man must embrace if he wishes to walk the path of the philosopher, maintaining his virtue and inner peace while honoring the humanity and autonomy of those around him. The first lesson the Stoic masters would teach is never to abandon your self-respect in the pursuit of another's affection. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that we must never compromise our character for temporary gains. And this wisdom applies profoundly to romantic relationships. When a man debases himself, when he begs and pleads for love that is not freely given, he violates the very essence of Stoic virtue. The philosopher understands that love, respect, and attraction cannot be manufactured through desperation or self-degradation. True connection flows naturally between two individuals who maintain their dignity and self-worth. The moment you sacrifice your principles, lower your standards, or engage in behavior that diminishes your character, you signal to the world and to yourself that you do not value what you possess. Epictetus taught that we are actors in a play, and our role is to perform our part with excellence, regardless of how others choose to perform theirs. A man of virtue recognizes that his worth is not determined by another's acceptance or rejection, but by his adherence to virtue, wisdom, courage, and justice. When you maintain your self-respect, you not only honor yourself, but create the conditions for authentic relationships built on mutual respect rather than desperation. The second principle that governs the Stoic man's conduct is never to seek external validation as the foundation of his identity. Seneca warned us that those who depend on others for their sense of worth become slaves to opinion and circumstance. In relationships with women, this manifests as the desperate need for constant approval, compliments, and reassurance. The unwise man constantly asks if he looks good, if he said the right thing, if he is loved enough, if he measures up to other men. This behavior reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of where true confidence originates. The Stoic knows that his value comes from within, from his character, his virtues, his commitment to wisdom and growth. He does not need a woman to validate his existence or confirm his worth. Instead, he approaches relationships from a place of abundance, offering his authentic self without the desperate need for approval. This creates an attractive dynamic where his confidence is self-generated and sustainable, independent of external circumstances. When you stop seeking validation, you paradoxically become more valuable and attractive because you demonstrate that your sense of self is solid and unshakable. The woman in your life can appreciate and enjoy you without feeling the burden of constantly propping up your ego or managing your insecurities. Never allow yourself to become possessive or controlling, for this violates the fundamental Stoic principle of respecting what is not within your control. Epictetus taught us to focus only on what belongs to us completely: our thoughts, our choices, our responses, our character. Another person's feelings, decisions, attractions, and ultimately their heart are not possessions to be owned or controlled. The possessive man operates from a place of fear and insecurity, believing that love can be hoarded like gold or imprisoned like a bird in a cage. But the Stoic understands that true love can only exist in freedom. When you try to control a woman's choices, monitor her every move, or restrict her autonomy, you reveal that your love is actually fear disguised. You fear loss, you fear inadequacy, you fear that given choice, she might choose differently. The wise man recognizes that a relationship where someone stays out of fear or restriction is no relationship at all. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we must love what we have while we have it, but hold it lightly, knowing that all things are temporary. The Stoic man loves deeply but without attachment, appreciates fully but without possession. He creates space for the woman in his life to be herself completely, knowing that authentic love can only flourish in the soil of freedom and mutual respect. The fourth lesson is never to react with uncontrolled emotion when faced with disappointment, rejection, or conflict. The Stoic masters taught that we cannot control what happens to us, but we have complete authority over our responses. In relationships, this wisdom becomes crucial when things don't go according to our expectations. The unwise man explodes in anger when rejected, becomes bitter when disappointed, or lashes out when his feelings are hurt. But the philosopher knows that such reactions reveal weakness, not strength. Seneca wrote that anger is temporary madness, and the man who cannot control his emotional responses becomes a slave to his passions. When a woman makes a choice that disappoints you, when she expresses displeasure with your behavior, or when conflict arises, the Stoic maintains his composure and responds from a place of wisdom rather than raw emotion. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent, but rather processing your emotions internally before choosing your response consciously. The man who can remain calm in the storm of relationship challenges demonstrates true strength and maturity. He becomes someone others can rely on, someone who brings stability rather than chaos to difficult situations. Women respect and are attracted to men who can handle emotional turbulence with grace and wisdom. Never make the mistake of chasing someone who has clearly indicated disinterest or unavailability. The Stoic virtue of wisdom includes the ability to read situations accurately and respond appropriately. When a woman has communicated through words or actions that she is not interested, continuing to pursue her violates both her boundaries and your own dignity. The unwise man interprets rejection as a challenge to overcome, believes that persistence will eventually wear down resistance, or convinces himself that he can change someone's mind through sheer force of will. But the philosopher understands that authentic attraction and affection cannot be manufactured or coerced. Marcus Aurelius taught us to accept what is rather than waste energy fighting reality. When someone is not interested, that is the reality of the situation, and wisdom lies in accepting it gracefully and moving forward. The Stoic man has enough self-respect to recognize that he deserves to be with someone who chooses him enthusiastically, not someone who has to be convinced or worn down. Chasing the uninterested not only wastes precious time and energy, but also sends the message that you don't believe you deserve genuine attraction and enthusiasm. The wise man withdraws gracefully when faced with disinterest, maintaining his dignity and preserving his energy for more promising opportunities. The sixth principle warns against the dangerous practice of sacrificing your life purpose and personal goals for the sake of a relationship. The Stoic philosophers emphasize the importance of living according to your nature and pursuing your highest potential. Your purpose, your mission, your growth as a man, these are sacred responsibilities that you have to yourself and to the world. When you abandon your goals, neglect your development, or compromise your vision of who you want to become for the sake of pleasing a woman, you commit a grave error. Seneca taught that we must guard our time as our most precious resource, and Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we have a duty to fulfill our potential. The man who gives up his dreams, stops pursuing his passions, or neglects his growth to accommodate someone else's preferences will eventually resent both himself and his partner. Moreover, a woman who truly cares for you wants to see you succeed and grow, not shrink and stagnate. The Stoic man maintains his focus on his purpose while creating space for love in his life. He doesn't choose between his mission and his relationships. Instead, he integrates them harmoniously. A man with purpose and direction is far more attractive and valuable than one who has abandoned his path to orbit around someone else's life. Your goals and growth should enhance your relationships, not be sacrificed for them. Never allow yourself to become emotionally dependent on a woman for your happiness, peace, or sense of completeness. The Stoic doctrine teaches that true contentment must come from within, from virtue, from the cultivation of wisdom, and from alignment with nature. When you make another person responsible for your emotional well-being, you create an impossible burden for them and a dangerous vulnerability for yourself. The emotionally dependent man cannot be alone without anxiety, cannot make decisions without approval, and cannot find peace without constant reassurance. This dynamic is exhausting for both parties and ultimately destructive to authentic love. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from recognizing what is truly yours, and your emotional state is one of the few things that belongs completely to you. The wise man cultivates inner peace through philosophy, reflection, and virtue. He enjoys the company and love of a woman as an enhancement to his already complete life, not as a desperate necessity. This creates a much healthier dynamic where both people can give and receive love freely without the pressure of being responsible for each other's fundamental happiness. When you are emotionally self-sufficient, you can love more generously because you're not constantly taking from the relationship to fill internal voids. The eighth lesson concerns the futility and destructiveness of trying to change someone to fit your preferences or expectations. The Stoic principle of accepting what is not within our control applies directly to other people's personalities, habits, preferences, and fundamental nature. The unwise man enters relationships believing he can mold the woman into his ideal partner, constantly offering suggestions, criticisms, or ultimatums designed to reshape her into someone different. But the philosopher knows that each person is responsible for their own growth and change, and that authentic transformation can only come from within. Marcus Aurelius wrote about accepting people as they are while still hoping for their growth, but never demanding it. When you constantly try to change a woman, you communicate that she is not acceptable as she is, which damages her self-esteem and your relationship. The Stoic man chooses partners whose fundamental character and values align with his own, rather than trying to transform incompatible matches. He appreciates and accepts the woman in his life as she is, supporting her growth when she chooses it, but never making it a condition of his love or respect. This approach creates an environment where positive change can occur naturally, without pressure or resentment. People grow best when they feel accepted and valued for who they are, not when they feel constantly judged and found wanting. Never compromise your core values or principles to gain someone's approval or affection. The Stoic masters taught that virtue is the highest good, and that no external reward is worth sacrificing your integrity. In relationships, this means never lying about who you are, never pretending to believe things you don't believe, and never acting in ways that contradict your deepest convictions. The man who compromises his values for love will find that the love he gains is not for his true self, but for a false persona he has created. This creates a hollow foundation for the relationship and requires constant energy to maintain the deception. Moreover, it sends the message that your values are negotiable and that you don't really believe in the principles you claim to hold. Seneca wrote that a man who compromises his integrity loses the respect of others and, more importantly, his own self-respect. The Stoic man would rather be alone and authentic than partnered and false. He presents his genuine self, including his values, beliefs, and principles, and allows others to choose whether they want to be part of his life on those terms. This authenticity attracts people who are compatible with who you really are and repels those who would require you to be someone else. A relationship built on authentic foundations has the strength to weather challenges and grow over time. The 10th principle addresses the self-destructive behavior of becoming bitter or vengeful when relationships end or when you feel wrong. The Stoic doctrine teaches that resentment and revenge are poisons that harm the one who carries them more than their intended target. When a relationship ends when you feel rejected or betrayed, the natural human response is often anger and a desire for retribution. But the wise man understands that holding on to anger and planning revenge only perpetuates his own suffering and prevents him from moving forward positively. Marcus Aurelius taught that the best revenge against those who wrong us is not to become like them. The Stoic man processes his emotions, learns from his experiences, and then releases the negativity to make room for better things in his life. He doesn't waste time and energy plotting revenge, spreading negativity about his former partner, or carrying grudges that poison his future relationships. Instead, he wishes everyone well, including those who have disappointed him, and focuses his energy on his own growth and future opportunities. This approach protects his own peace of mind and maintains his integrity while positioning him for healthier relationships in the future. Bitterness makes you unattractive and suspicious to potential partners, while grace and maturity make you magnetic to quality people. The final lesson that every Stoic man must embrace is never to define his worth or success as a man by his relationship status or romantic conquests. Modern culture often teaches men that their value is measured by their ability to attract women, the number of their romantic successes, or their relationship status. But the philosopher knows that true masculine worth comes from character, virtue, wisdom, and the contribution he makes to the world. The man who bases his identity on romantic success becomes a slave to external validation and experiences devastating crashes when relationships end or when he faces rejection. Epictetus taught that we must focus on what is truly ours, and your worth as a human being is determined by your integrity, your growth, your service to others, and your alignment with virtue. The Stoic man works on himself constantly, pursues his purpose with dedication, treats others with respect and kindness, and measures his success by his adherence to philosophical principles rather than external achievements. This internal foundation makes him attractive to quality partners because he demonstrates stability, self-awareness, and genuine confidence. When you don't need romantic success to feel valuable, you paradoxically become more successful romantically because you approach relationships from abundance rather than desperation. Your worth as a man is not determined by any woman's opinion of you, but by your commitment to living virtuously and growing into your highest potential. The path of the Stoic is not an easy one, but it is the path of the free man. When you embrace these principles, when you choose self-respect over desperation, wisdom over emotion, and virtue over validation, you transform not only your relationships, but your entire life. The ancient philosophers understood that true strength is not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. It is not in getting what you want, but in wanting what is virtuous. It is not in avoiding all pain, but in responding to pain with grace and wisdom. The man who lives by these principles becomes a beacon of stability in an unstable world, a source of strength for those around him, and an example of what it means to live with dignity and purpose. Your relationships with women will flourish when they are built on the solid foundation of your own self-respect, emotional mastery, and commitment to virtue. You will attract and maintain connections with people who appreciate authenticity, who value strength of character, and who want to be part of a life lived with intention and wisdom. Remember that every day is an opportunity to practice these principles, to choose the harder right over the easier wrong, and to build the kind of character that serves as a compass in all of life's challenges. The Stoic legacy calls you to be more than ordinary, to rise above the common patterns of desperation and weakness, and to embody the timeless virtues that make a man truly worthy of respect and love.